You've probably heard of the Mary Celeste. It's maybe the most famous ghost story of the sea. But we're not here to tell a ghost story today. Nope. We're here to open a cold case. We're going to take this legendary maritime mystery and transform it into a solved forensic investigation, using nothing but the hard evidence that was left behind.
So let's get right into it. The mystery itself is, well, it's simple and it is absolutely chilling. We're in 1872. A perfectly good merchant ship is found drifting, aimlessly, in the middle of the Atlantic. Its cargo, untouched, provisions, plenty of them, but every single person on board, the captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the entire crew had vanished. Just gone. Our story really kicks off on December 4th, 1872. The crew of a Canadian ship, the Deconstructing, they spot another vessel. It's sailing strangely, kind of erratically, and its sails are a bit of a mess. And as they pull closer, this feeling starts to creep in that something is seriously wrong. There's nobody at the wheel. In fact, there's nobody on deck at all. To figure this out, we have to zoom in on a really specific window of time. So the Mary Celeste leaves New York on November 7th. The very last entry in the ship's log is made on the morning of November 25th. Just 9 days after that, she's found totally abandoned. Whatever went down, it happened in that 9-day gap. Okay, and this is where we have to be really, really careful, because the story of the Mary Celeste that you've probably heard, it's almost entirely fiction. So we're going to treat the ship just like a modern crime scene, and we're only going to focus on the official court testimony from the very first men who stepped aboard. Now check this out. This slide just completely shatters the myth, the legend, right? It says there were warm meals still on the table. The reality, not only was there no food out, but the galley stove had been knocked out of place. The legend claims the ship was in perfect shape. The reality, it had 3.5 feet of water sloshing in the hold, and, this is huge, the ship's only lifeboat was. Let's dig into the primary investigator's report. This is the sworn testimony of Oliver DeVoe, the first mate from the rescue ship. He described the deck as a thoroughly wet mess. He found one of the critical bilge pumps taken apart on the deck, like someone was trying to fix it. The captain's cabin was soaked and his vital navigational tools were missing. See? These aren't clues to a ghost story. These are clues to a desperate, real-world situation. So, of course, a mystery this bizarre is going to give birth to all kinds of wild theories. So for our forensic investigation, let's go ahead and line up the usual suspects and see if any of them actually hold up to the evidence. We can actually get through these pretty fast. Piracy? No way. The super valuable cargo of industrial alcohol was still there. Mutiny? Doesn't fit. Captain Briggs was known as a good, respected man, and there were zero signs of any violence. Insurance fraud? Makes no sense. Briggs was a part owner of the ship himself. And a sea monster? Well, look, the ship itself was perfectly intact. The evidence just isn't there for any of these.
The official investigation, though, was led by this guy, Frederick Sully Flood. He was the Queen's prosecutor over in Gibraltar, and he became absolutely convinced, obsessed even, that the crew of the Deconstructing had killed everyone on board the Mary Celeste just so they could claim the salvage money.
Sully Flood's star piece of evidence was a sword found under the captain's bed with what he claimed were bloodstains. He pushed this theory hard, but science, even way back in 1873, had an answer. They ordered a chemical analysis, and the test proved the stains weren't blood at all. It was just rust being cleaned with lemon juice. And just like that, Sully Flood's entire murder theory completely fell apart. So, if it wasn't pirates, or mutiny, or murder, what was it? This is the point where we stop debunking the crazy theories and start building a real scientific case. And the answer, it isn't one big, dramatic thing. It's a cascade. It's a perfect storm of small, seemingly unrelated problems that all came together to create an absolute catastrophe. Okay, so clue number 1 is hidden down in the cargo hold. The ship was carrying over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. Now, when that cargo was finally unloaded, they found that 9 of those barrels were empty, and a closer look showed they were made from porous red oak, not the watertight white oak like all the others. So for weeks, these 9 barrels had been slowly, silently leaking hundreds of gallons of explosive alcohol fumes into the hold. The second problem was mechanical. The Mary Celeste's last trip, it was carrying coal. And that leftover coal dust, mixed with sawdust from a recent repair job and seawater from storms, had created this thick, nasty sludge. And that sludge completely clogged up the bilge pumps. This explains that disassembled pump on the deck. The crew knew they had a problem and they were desperately trying to fix it. And the third failure was navigational. A modern analysis, where they plotted the ship's own log against historical weather data, it shows that Captain Briggs was lost. His chronometer, his main navigational tool, was off. It put him 120 miles west of where he thought he was. Now, for a captain responsible for his family, that would have created an incredible amount of stress. So here's where it all comes together. You can see how these problems just stack on top of each other. You've got a hole filling up with explosive fumes. Your pumps are broken, so you can't clear water out. A blocked sounding tube might even be giving you a false reading that you're sinking away faster than you are. And on top of all that, you're lost. This is the perfect recipe for a rational, but very panicked decision. So, with all this evidence in hand, we can now reconstruct what most likely happened on that final morning. Let's travel back in time to November 25th, 1872, near the Azores. It's 8 a.m. Captain Briggs makes his final log entry. Now, this is a good captain, facing a truly impossible situation. He's got good reason to believe his ship could explode at any minute. He might think it's sinking, he knows his pumps are broken, and he knows he's way off course with his wife and his little girl on board. So what was the final straw? Well, this quote from Dr. Andrea Sella explains it perfectly. An experiment at University College London proved that alcohol fumes in a space like a ship's hold can create something called a pressure wave explosion. It makes this terrifying fireball and a huge bang, but it happens so fast it doesn't even have time to leave scorch marks or soot. It's a ghost explosion. Imagine it. Suddenly, there's this deafening woof from the cargo hold as those fumes ignite. The main hatches are blown clean open. To everyone on that deck, it would have sounded like the hull of their ship was splitting in two. This was the point of no return. So Captain Briggs makes a quick command decision, a temporary evacuation. This was never meant to be a permanent abandoned ship situation. He orders everyone into the little lifeboat, and he grabs his essential navigational instruments, the very things that were found missing from his cabin. He was planning to come back. And this is the final, heartbreaking piece of the puzzle. They'd tie their little lifeboat to the Mary Celeste with a long rope, just to keep a safe distance for a bit. But the ship is still under sail. A sudden squall hits. The wind fills those sails. The massive ship lurches forward. The line pulls taut, and it snaps. And they are left helpless in a tiny boat, watching their ship, their only chance of survival, sail away over the horizon. And that was it. The fate of those 10 people in the lifeboat was sealed. They were lost to the Atlantic. But the story of the ship, well, that was just getting started. So how did this awful, tragic story of bad luck and mechanical failures turn into the world's most famous ghost story? Well, we can pretty much point to one person, a young Arthur Conan Doyle, years before he ever dreamed up Sherlock Holmes. In 1884, he wrote a fictional short story inspired by the case, and it is right here in his story that the myths of the neatly stowed lifeboat, the freshly laid out meal, and the still warm cup of tea all appear for the first time. It was fantastic fiction, but it wasn't fact. You know, Conan Doyle's story was so powerful, it even permanently changed how people remember the ship's name. The real ship was the Mary Celeste, but his fictional story called it the Marie Celeste. It's a tiny change, but it's the fictional name that is stuck in so many people's minds. When you really step back and look at it, the forensic truth of the Mary Celeste is a story of physics, chemistry, human error, and just some extraordinarily bad luck. It's complicated, for sure, but it is explainable. And yet, for more than 100 years, the simple, spooky ghost story has been way more popular. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Why is it that we so often prefer a simple mystery over a more complicated but logical truth?